some new results from set 6 has now come to the format for standard, and we had 2 WGP events as well as BCS Philadelphia. Let's go through all the results because there's actually some really new innovations that, you know, not a lot of people expected and definitely not what I expected. And as you can see from the pie chart here, let's start with Deluxe Singapore National Finals. So these are the top 8 decks that made it. So 2 Raziel, which is pretty normal. Pretty much what we've been seeing over the past season in the set 5 format. And then 2 Maelstrom. That is obviously the new deck coming out from set 6. It got Glory Maelstrom and a very good grade 2 coming out of that. So 2 Maelstrom making it there. 1 Love, 1 Jiva, which is, I think, the same player that we saw who did well in season 4. 1 Varga and 1 Michu. Michu still doing well and, you know, still taking names, which is really cool. Then in the top 4, first and second, both taken by Raziel. Third was Love. And then 4th place, just missing out, Virina, which is Jiva. Let's go through some of these decks from the top 4. So we had Raziel. This one is pretty straightforward, I think. The Koro card here is Sir Gawain, playing the Wisdom package, so Wisdom Default. And playing one of this grade 2, which essentially stops intercept abilities. But yeah, otherwise 1/1 hostage package and everything else is kind of your normal Raziel, right? I think Beta really capitalizes on 5 attacks now, and it just draws heaps because of, like, you know, spamming Sir Gawain. You become like a 4 attack deck into a 5 attack deck, and then your Garboilius gets you 1 card back, right? So Raziel, really strong deck, and I think, you know, we'll see a lot more of this on the English side as well. Then second place was also Raziel, quite similar, default Wisdom Engine, no hostage in this case, just straight up 4 Sir Gawain, 1 Maple. This is very similar to Riku's deck from the JP side, 2 Biscottis and 1 Garboilius, right? Garboilius, you're only really calling it out once anyway, so I guess you're limiting 1 so that you find space for everything else, right? Then we also had the Love deck. It's pretty straightforward. The only thing that is different here is like Obscadade and the bottom deck card. This one, bottom decks anything of the same copy as the card that you selected from your drop. So if you're playing the mirror match, not the mirror match, but the Raziel, if they leave a Sir Gawain on the board, you just move all the Sir Gawans to the bottom deck. But I think, like, in this format, people are a bit too smart, and especially if you get to top 8, people are a bit too smart for you to be able to do that. But, you know, the bottom deck sometimes works really well into like something like Leonorn, and I guess Singapore did have a lot of Leonorns as well, right? So yeah, that's pretty cool. Otherwise, everything else is kind of your similar Love deck. Not going to go too deep into this deck. The last one is the Jiva, max rarity, very, very cool. We've seen this on stream. Big shout out to the player Virina for playing this deck. Very cool. I think, I'm not too sure what actually changed. I think they might have like changed 1 or 2 grade 1s. Like, I don't remember seeing this in their season 4 list. And then I guess like a lot of like one-offs, right? So like, yeah, like one-offs of these all these prayer dragons, and then obviously, you know, the guy that essentially removes all markers, right? Which is really good in a lever dress built format, right? And yeah, that's one big talking point, right? We didn't see a lot of lever dress, right? But we did get a Maelstrom list. So big shout out to Eugene Teo. This list is very cool. So he made top 8. Got all the goods, you know, the Akina marker and stuff like that. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about this deck and kind of how it works. So obviously the new Glory Maelstrom is, I guess, similar to Leo Odium, where the more Blue Storm Armadas you have in your auto zone, your front row scales by 5k. So your front row gains +5 for every Blue Storm Armada in your auto zone, making all your attacks +15, +25 on Persona Ride. You're playing 4 base Maelstrom because the more copies of base Maelstrom you have, Glory actually stacks its effects based on the Maelstroms in your soul as well as the ones on Rearguard. The Dancing Cutlass is really cool. So Dancing Cutlass is pretty much a Tiscar clone. So if you discard it for Ride deck, you can Energy Blast 3 and draw 1. But ultimately, from the drop zone, you can bind 2 copies of it to countercharge. Your Wheel Assault allows you to swap 2 units' positions on the board, so you can have like 2 attackers in the same column and then switch them. So that's Wheel Assault's application. And then I guess looking at like the cyclers, right? So you play 3 of the EB cyclers, 4 of the Lamina or the Soul Blast, cyclers that goes to bottom deck to draw 1. So in the early game, you're essentially digging for pieces, digging for your new grade 2. So your new grade 2 essentially allows you to top 7 for a Maelstrom or a Blue Storm Armada. But after battle, I think it swaps. So you have essentially 8 cards that swap. But I think the real big buff is that Glory Maelstrom gives you plus 15 if you have 3 Blue Storm Armadas in your order zone. It's pretty smart to only play 3 because the game doesn't last that long to be able to get to your 4th one. So if you get to your, 3rd copy, it's like pretty GG, right? Like I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 or 6 attacks, or maybe even 7 attacks or something like that. So yeah, the fact that you have a front row scaling of power is really, really strong in this deck, right? Which is what Glory provides. And sometimes if you hit the over trigger, what you can do with Glory Maelstrom is like, if your Maelstrom attacks, you can just rest 2 Blue Storm Armadas and then your opponent can't call Sentinels. So it just makes it a really big number, really hard to guard, and your opponent has to manually guard like something with crit, right? So yeah, very, very cool deck. I think this deck is... this deck apparently was built to beat Rezael, and I guess the reason why it beats Rezael is scaling of power, more attacks, and it doesn't allow for Rezael to capitalize. And I think this is, I guess, a really good framework to work off. And I think, a lot of people on the Western side and I guess on the JP side now that they've seen this framework, will start to innovate on this build. So yeah, big shout out again to Eugene. Very cool. I think this is a very, very cool list. Definitely worth a try. I might, whip it up sometime in proxies and see how the deck goes. Then jumping to Deluxe Thailand National Finals. So here is a bit more tame, other than the Viman's Bruce over here, sitting in the top left corner here. So 2 Raziel, 2 Vargas, 1 Leverdress, Jet, Odium, and Bruce. And Jet did get some buffs. And look at that, first taken by Rezael, second was Varga, third was Leverdress, and fourth taken by Jet. So pretty keen to see what the Jet deck looks like, but let's start with the Rezael deck. Very similar to the other ones. I'm not too sure if the other ones ran purple OT, right? The other ones ran red and blue, so this one ran purple. So purple OT, still Tayfault engine, no hostage package, and yeah, pretty normal stuff, right? Then looking at the Varga, Varga is, I don't know. I feel Varga is a little bit odd. I mean, if you get really lucky during the day, if you're having a really good day, this deck is unstoppable, right? So yeah, if you get your searches like this, you full heart into your stuff, you use your grade 1 to get your Varga Rakshasa, and then pretty much everything else just kind of plays normal like Varga, right? The only difference now with Rakshasa is that it doesn't have a limit break 4 condition, so you will always restand 3 times on turn 4, right? So yeah, I mean, if you hold off, then great, but yeah, it's very rare that you hold off on the Divine Skill. So yeah, otherwise, very similar deck to what it was in set 4. Then we had Leverdress. Leverdress is actually probably one of the best decks in the format at the moment. So this one plays 3 Sharmet, 4, 3 of the Sephiras. So usually a lot of decks play 3 Huli and 4 Sephiras. But yeah, this deck is pretty maxed. Like FF5 Sephiras here, 2 Squirrel, 1 of the CC guy, 4 Foxils, and 1 Habitat. I think the 1 Habitat is really cool. I've been playing around with the 1 Habitat, and it allows you to have extra copies of other cards. Well, it becomes extra copies of other cards because then you're digging further into your deck, right? The more cards that you dig through your deck, the better, because you're weeding out all of the normal units so that your Anadogasta becomes a top check for triggers, right? Really, really important. But otherwise, yeah, playing Twin Cast, yeah, pretty normal stuff. Then we have the Jet deck. So this Jet deck, I want to see if it's very similar to the one that Malaysia has been playing. So 2 Noctursias, but 2 Bali, which is a lot of grade 3s, I think. Only 1 Glimmer Breath, 2 Forward Reverters, 4 of the Shenri clone. Shenri clone is pretty good in this deck, apparently. 2 of the Chronojet orders. But otherwise, the main deck doesn't really change. You're still playing, 4 Clockwise, 2 Tiskars, 4 Upstream, 1 to be able to tutor out, 2 GG, and 1 Falcate. Falcate's pretty interesting. I guess Falcate allows you to soul in stuff, but I would rather see, like, I don't know, I would rather get rid of the Bali and like put in like Falcratia. I think Falcratia is really good, even at just 1 copy, because what you can do, you can jump a grade 1 to grade 2 into Falcratia. Falcratia becomes like a really big attacker. So yeah, that's like another thing I would do. But otherwise, everything is kind of what we expected to see. And this deck played... Oh, okay, they're not playing the 8 G-Zone strat. So just straight up 12 G-Zone. A lot of players play 8 G-Zone so that it makes your opponent think that you're not playing Jet or Messiah, because they are the only 2 strat decks with 12 card G-Zones, right? So some people opt to play less next stage, and I guess slot in the Chronos command, but this player just, screw it. I'm going to play 12 G-Zone. They can either 50-50 on Jet or Messiah. Then we had BCS Philly as well. So we only had the top 8 breakdown. The top 32 and 16 weren't available. So 2 Shoujo Doji, 2 Leonorn, 1 Prison, Alden, Messiah, and Empoleon made it. Very, very cool. I think the diversity is much better than some of the other regions where it was very dominated with Shoujo Doji. And I guess looking at the top 4, it was not dominated by Shoujo Doji. So first was Alden, second Messiah, third Shoujo Doji, and fourth was Shoujo Doji. So first of all, big shout out to Fuzzy. He pretty much ran the stream. It was an amazing stream. I tuned in both days. Very, very good. High quality stream. Even had commentary as well. So had commentary from Naru Samurai, Cardweeb, so Charlie. It was fantastic. And just seeing, how the deck's played, very, very cool. So I guess looking at the Olin deck plays a lot of like early game stuff. So, the Valtrosa to be able to dig for stuff, 2 of the CC, and essentially like you get 3 of this in the back row, and you're winning, right? And then you essentially want Ermac. Ermac is your big attacker, and then you essentially attack 5 times, right? 5 times gets really tanky, and the only way to really beat this deck is to have a really strong early game, because it becomes really, really tanky. But otherwise, Tayfault. So playing the Tayfault engine with the Wisdom kind of makes sense. You want to play a really good early game. So Gowan just promotes that, and so Gowan's a broken card. Like, why would you not run it, right? Then looking at Messiah, so Messiah is pretty straightforward. Nothing out of the ordinary. I think 4 Valtrosis is correct. I think a lot of people was playing that when the Dual Nations first came out, and then playing 3 of the Prelude of Genesis. So the card that essentially, when it's discarded for Stride, you choose 1 of your heart and it becomes free. Free of cost. And then you can, I guess, play it to revive a unit and then choose 1 of your opponent's rear guards to lock it, right? So I think there's a lot of grade 3s, right? So like you're playing 2 Alter Egos, 3 of the Enlargulf clone, or whatever it's called, the Stride Ditchers, 3 Preludes. But I think one thing with this deck is that it draws a lot, right? And I think drawing a lot against Shoujo Doji is really good. Even if you go second, I think going second is ideally pretty good, unless Shoujo Doji empties up their board, so it kind of reduces the draw. But I think the draws are just like really, really impactful, right? Drawing 3, drawing 4 at the end of turn is just really strong into a deck that's Omega aggressive. Especially if like all of attacks, like if you hit a defensive right, it's just like everything is like 1 card guard. Like drawing 4 is like super easy, yeah. But yeah, very, very cool deck. And then the Shoujo Dojis that came 3rd and 4th, I don't think we need to really run through this. It's very simple: 2 Folklore, 3 Unprecedented, and 4 of pretty much every other important card in the deck. Union in the Sky as well. Then the 4th list, I think, is very similar. Oh, they play this Dojin guy. So when it's placed on rearguard, if you have a Shoujo Doji, you choose a stealth from your soul and you may bind it. So you can bind more. And when this unit is placed from rear guard into soul during your battle phase, so by Shoujo Doji's effect or Kinran, you can energy blast to choose a face-up card in your opponent's bind zone and put it into your drop. So more cards to be able to put it into the drop zone. I think this is a new PR that came out too. So yeah, cool inclusion instead of the Folklores in the other deck. So that's Shoujo Doji. Then the last bit is BCS Philadelphia Premium. There was a lot of Gridora. 8 Mega Colony in the top 32 breakdown. So that is 33% of the top cut breakdown, which is really, really wild to me. 6 Nubatama, 4 Ground Blue, 3 New Nectar. Like, I think this section here is gonna cry a little bit, especially if they get matched into Mega Colony. There's a bunch of other stuff, like some interesting ones. I think this is Flagbird Colony as well. Angel Gize, Regalia, Chaos. Davos made it too, which is pretty wild. Then the top 16, mainly dominated by Mega Colony. So 3 traditional Gridora and then 1 Flagbird Colony here. 3 Nubatama, 2 Grand Blue, and pretty much nearly all the Neonectars died. Only 1 survived. Davos is there, Highlanders there, pretty good. Especially if they get matched into Gridora, right? Then the top 8, 3 Nubatama, 3 Gridoras, where one of them was the Flagbird Colony. 1 Spike Brothers made it, which is wild. And 1 Grand Blue. Then the top 4 to win it all was Shunui. So I think Shunui is a really good pick into Gridora. I guess like if both players are really good, the better player will, well, naturally the deck is better, right? But if like, you know, the Gridora is extremely good but the Shunui is bad, then I guess the Gridora would win, right? But these two players are really strong. I know that Peter is a one trick with Mega Colony, so congrats on your World's Invite. With Gridora 2nd place. 3rd was the Spike Brothers, coming 3rd place. And then 4th, Alicia, coming 4th with Shunui. I'm pretty sure this player also came 2nd with Messiah, so 2nd and 4th, double day at a extremely large regionals. That is very, very good. So, you know, props to them. So I guess looking at the 1st place list, no V Shunui, just straight up 4 Oboro. Makes sense, especially if you're going into a field with Shunui and Gridora. 1 Mizukaze, playing ladder instead of Forbidol, and no Esperadias. So just straight up, you know, Furai, Magatsu Gale, 4 Doji, 4 of the VPR. Yeah, just straight up. I guess if you're going into a format or an environment where it's a lot of Gridoras, then you can kind of forego Esperadia because you're always going to dominate stuff. And I guess like, just thinking about it, right? There's not a lot of decks that play ladder, so I think Oboro just straight up not playing Esperadia is fine because you're always going to be dominating something. So yeah, cool build. But otherwise, nothing out of the ordinary. Maybe like the 1 Gilgao here. And G Mukuro is normal. And one of the Mujinlo Dagoku, the one that copies strides, dominates strides. So I guess this makes sense, especially on 1st stride. If your opponent history collections, you can call to history collection, the history collection stride from your opponent's G zone and attack with them. And then it procs your Furais as well instead of going into the 2 protects from the history collection. So playing a bit more aggressive, right? I think that's a really good inclusion. I think this is definitely something that not a lot of people explored. And I think it's a really good one-of, especially if you're going 2nd into something like Katrina, right? Then at least then you have a way to be able to dominate something so that your Furais turn on, yeah? So yeah, very cool list. This is Peter's list, playing 3 Pika. This is something that we definitely didn't see. Pushing all of your grade 3s to 13k base. I guess that's really important into Narakami. Narakami, if you're on 11k, you're pretty much crying. And I think Narakami, I don't know if it's popular now. I didn't see any in the top 32 breakdown. So I'm not too sure if this is necessary. But I guess like 13k is just overall good, right? 1 Antlion, playing still the Giraffe, grade 2 to NPix. I think the NPix inclusion is really cool, but I don't see a way to get rid of your front row to make NPix viable. So I'm not sure. And I think this list also doesn't play in Logolf and Dove Spin. So there's a lot of things that aren't being ran, which is odd. But I guess then you're like, you're pushing for stuff like being a bit more aggressive with like Sephiras, your Giraffes, your early game, right? So yeah, just a different take on Gridora, which is, something that people are innovating on, right? The third place is Spikes. So I think this Spikes list is very cool. It's very different from the Hellheart 8 Turbo. So you're still playing one of the Rising Nova to essentially get double force going first. But if you're going first, sometimes you can just ride into Rising Nova, copy Greedon and Max and just do three Vanguard attacks. So that's that. So Rising Greedon stuff. Devil Dom Chemist to essentially blow out of proportions with numbers. Mayhem Tiger to retire Guardians. That's really cool. And then just, basic stuff like your Ambush Dexter to get your grade 3s out in the early game. Rona to get essentially a board right. And then Forbidol's very, very good in this deck. Pretty much tutoring any of your other stuff, any of your grade 3s out, like your Lucifers to countercharge, your Max. It's like pretty good stuff, yeah. But otherwise, yeah, very straightforward Rising Greed on this. I think Rising Greedon hasn't topped much at all, so very cool to see Spike Brothers come third. And then the fourth place was Alicia, different take, so 2 Zankis, no Esperadias, but playing Sekai, Furai, no Shoujo Doji grade 2 in the early game engine. I guess you can kind of forego it, especially if you're riding this to put a booster behind. Onen's good, 2 of the grade 1 that becomes a heal, and everything else is kind of as it is. 2 Mugen Lord, I think this is really good. Especially into Gridora, I think this card really wins Gridora, because even if your Vanguard is stunned, you can still attack with your opponent's rear guards, and especially if they're at 5 damage, that's an instant, 5 cards out of hand, especially if all of your stuff dominates and attacks, right? So yeah, very, very different takes, right? And I think this is a really good way to kind of see like different inclusions in your deck. And I think that first place list is really, really strong. I think the player who piloted the first place list really put a lot of effort into learning Crestno and kind of how everything works and really adapted to the environment. And I think a lot of people were just playing Gridoras in general in North America anyway, so it's a very, very great way to kind of interpret what tournament scene you're going into, right? So yeah, that's pretty much all the results for this week. We have a lot of events coming up. I think we have BCS Malaysia coming up. We also have Vancouver. Is it Vancouver? I know that there was one in the US coming up very, very soon. Rosemont, I think. Rosemont. And then, yeah, I think there might be one in EU. But yeah, lots of events coming up. I think there was also a Hong Kong national finals as well. But yeah, anyways, we'll wait till next week to see the results of that. So if you guys like this video, pop a like, comment down below what you guys think of all the results over this past weekend. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.